Welcome to the CyberRants podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello and welcome to the CyberRants podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo and Lauro Chavez. And today we have a little bit of a different type of topic that I think is very valid right now. So we've been in this long run up in the economy, which is great. And the tides are turning, right? And as they always do, it's all cyclical, right? There are ups and downs. In my humble opinion, I think it's been inflated far too long, but that's maybe another topic. What we're going to talk about today, though, is for those companies out there that are being a little more tight with their budgets, those technology leaders that are, getting requests from the executive team, from the board to be a little bit more stringent and reduce their spending. So we're going to talk about that, what we need to do to reduce spend, where you really get the most bang for your buck in terms of cyber risk management, and what areas you can kind of set aside or postpone for a little bit. So we'll dive into that. But before we do, Mike, why don't you kick us off with the news?
Morning and welcome to the news. For all those of you that are living the casual life, flaws in smart jacuzzi app could be exploited to extract users' data. So be careful with your intelligent jacuzzi. Researchers have identified vulnerabilities in Jacuzzi brand LLC's Smart Tub app web interface that can reveal private data to hackers. Security researcher and ethical hacker from EatonWorks has identified a security flaw in the Smart Tub feature of the app used in the hot tubs manufactured by Jacuzzi. The flaw exists in the app's web interface, and as per the researcher, it allows a threat actor to view and abuse the personal data of the hot tub users. No reports of anybody being cooked or boiled. Some of the data that can be provided is first and last names, email addresses, view details of every spa, check its owner, and remove their ownership, which might mess with your warranty. Furthermore, he can also view user accounts and edit them. This is a little closer to home. Mitel zero-day used by hackers in suspected ransomware attack. Hackers used a zero-day exploit on Linux-based Mitel MyVoice VoIP appliances for initial access, what is believed to be the beginning of a ransomware attack. The vulnerability lies in the Mitel service application appliance component of MyVoice Connect used in SA100, SA400, and Virtual SA, allowing an attacker to perform a remote code execution in the content service of the appliance. Mitel recently was exploited by threat actors for high-volume DDoS amplification attacks. In a new report by CrowdStrike, the company says that a zero-day remote code execution flaw now tracked as CVE 2022-29499 is rated as a 9.8, which is a critical. For those of you trying to hire, according to the FBI, stolen PII and deep fakes used to apply for remote tech jobs. Federal Bureau of Investigation warns of increasing complaints that cyber criminals are using Americans' stolen PII and deep fakes to apply for remote work positions. The remote work or work from home positions identified in these reports include information technology and computer programming, database, and software-related job functions, the FBI said. Notably, some reported positions include access to customer PII, financial data, corporate IT databases, and or proprietary information. So do those background checks. New phishing method that bypasses MFA using Microsoft WebView 2 apps. A new phishing technique uses Microsoft Edge WebView 2 applications to steal victims' authentication cookies, allowing threat actors to bypass multi-factor authentication when logging into stolen accounts. The new attack is called WebView 2-Cookie Stealer. They could have been more creative with that. And consists of WebView 2 executable that, when launched, opens up a legitimate website's login from inside the application. The story has all sorts of cool graphics in there. Take a look at that, but it shows you what it does. But using this technology, apps can load any website into a native application and have it appear as it would if you had opened it in Microsoft Edge. This is reminiscent of something we used to do to abuse Internet Explorer, where you'd create a fake Google page and implement a iframe behind it and control the computer from there. Be careful. Lockbit 3.0 introduces the first ransomware bug bounty program. Lockbit ransomware operation has released Lockbit 3.0, introducing the first ransomware bug bounty program and leaking new extortion tactics and Zcash cryptocurrency payment options. With the release of Lockbit 3.0, after beta testing for the past 2 months with their new version already used in attacks, the operation also introduced the first bug bounty program offered by a ransomware gang, asking security researchers to submit bug reports in return for rewards ranging from $1,000 to $1 million. So, at least they're becoming more professional. There's a couple of hacks, things you want to be aware of. Latest OpenSSL version is affected by remote memory corruption. Microsoft fixes bugs that let hijackers hijack Azure Linux clusters. And the EvilNum hackers return a new operation targeting migration orgs. So there's a bunch of stuff out there, but I think the most important thing we have to take away is make sure you secure your jacuzzi. All right, Laura, any vulnerabilities?
Yeah, we've certainly got some vulnerabilities with exploits this week. I think it's so interesting that some of these brilliant cyber criminals will work, for thousands of hours to come up with just a very, very clutch, hack or tool. And they're like, what do we want to call it? And let's call it Jerry. It's always something random that doesn't even meet the amount of work that went into the product. So reference to your cookie stealer. So for exploits this week, got two things, and I think this kind of fits in line with part of the topic that we have today with economic changes and companies are looking places to better spend their money. They're looking for places to maybe cut down on some of those costs. Well, that brings us to today with the QDPM, which is a free web-based project management tool that is something that businesses are using to probably give them a more cost-effective, affordable way of doing project management. However, if you are using QPDM, be careful because there is a remote code execution vulnerability with an exploit payload that's been tested and verified for that product. So if you are using that QDM version 3, I believe this infects all the way up to version 9.1. So keep that in mind. And then moving on to other I'd say budget-based tools. Pandora FMS is the network management tool that allows you to do lots of things, logging, aggregation, network monitoring, things like that, like so for device and host monitoring. Again, Pandora FMS has a remote code execution for it. So lots of companies, if you go to the FMS Pandora site, you'll see that they've got some really big names that are using their brand of tools. However, this remote code execution is gonna cause problems for version 7, all the way through version 7.4.2. So if you've got Pandora FMS and you're leveraging that for your infrastructure awareness, make sure you're patching because there are payloads out there available for this remote code execution and they are unauthenticated. So with that, Zach, what are we talking about today? Inflation?
There's a lot to talk about. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. But long story short, it's no secret, right? Tides are changing. Stock market's been dropping. Those listeners, you probably see that in your own portfolios, right? And if you have a big crypto portfolio, it's definitely dropped. So that being said, a lot of companies are looking at this and saying, okay, well, tides are changing, time to be a little bit more conservative, as it always happens, right? So there's going to be a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, oh no, change is occurring, and then we settle back into kind of your normal life, even if it's a down economy. I don't think anybody anticipates another Great Depression, although there are the doom and gloom people out there that always think that. But that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about where can we cut budgets, where can we spend our money to get the most out of it, and we're going to dive right into that after a quick commercial break.
Want even more CyberRants? Be sure to subscribe to the CyberRants podcast. Get your copy of our best-selling book, CyberRants, on Amazon today. This podcast is brought to you by Silent Sector, the firm dedicated to building world-class cybersecurity programs for mid-market and emerging companies across the U.S. Silent Sector also provides industry-leading penetration tests and cyber risk assessments. Visit silentsector.com and contact us today.
And we're back with the CyberRants podcast. Let's dive right in with the changing economy. If you are a technology leader or even just business leader in general, you're looking to be a little bit more tight with budget or really get the most bang for your buck when it comes to cyber risk management, Let's talk first about your top priorities. What do you need to focus on first? What are those things that are inevitable that you got to do no matter what goes on in the business environment? Any lists? I'm not necessarily looking for a list, but any thoughts on, kind of what's the first thing that you would consider?
So good question, Zach. What services that you've got, cybersecurity specific, right? That are, because I think that's kind of the core of our topic today. Cybersecurity, processes that you need to do better spend on. I think there are a few processes that are occurring that are vital to, the security posture and risk reduction of the organization. And those are things like internal and external vulnerability scanning, and your penetration testing and all of the, kind of proactive tools that are maybe in place today that are providing you a purview of your overall risk. I think those are probably some of the most important things to keep on. And then I guess, I don't know, there's compliance initiatives. Mike, what do you think?
Well, you can't cut back on compliance. I mean, you just can't. Period. End of story. Even for those compliance frameworks like HIPAA that don't mandate um, annual risk assessments, they do mandate risk assessments or analysis of the framework, but they don't mandate an annual one. The industry expectation is that you do an annual one for HIPAA, PCI annual, SOC 2 annual. You really don't have a choice. So inside of those regulated structures, you have to ensure that you're still maintaining all of those things that make you compliant, even pausing them for 3 months or 6 months to save money in the short term will cost you more money in the back end when you go to that audit. And really, there's other things you can cut before you cut cybersecurity. And I'm not just saying that because that's what we do. It's too critical. And also, if you look at the environment around us, I mean, that FBI alert that we had in the beginning of the news talking about how they're using deep fakes now to fake remote workers. You have to be diligent in your employees. You have to keep your employees. And as a matter of fact, for you smaller to mid-sized companies, you need to invest more in your employees right now because they're just going to get picked up by a bigger company that has deeper pockets if you don't. So if they're worried about their jobs, they're going to bail. And, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. According to that CyberSeek, there's almost 800,000 available cybersecurity positions across the United States alone. So I'll agree with Mike. It's very important that you treat all of your technical personnel really well during this time. I think when companies are investor heavy, right? They've got, angel investors and they've got investment dollars coming in to fund the business, that the very first place they try to cut is usually people, right? And I think
Yeah.
we've even seen some of that. They try to shorten their development team or their technical team, and just keep in mind that the individuals, if you're cutting people to make the numbers meet, you're probably not going to be able to get those people back. A shameless plug:
Yeah.
cybersecurity can be helped by silent sector if you are short on people. But just
Yeah.
anticipate that who you let go today, you're probably not going to get back tomorrow when you need them, because the
Yeah.
industry is rampant with open positions right now. And if you bail on your employees and you reduce your manpower, they're probably not going to come back. And when
Yeah.
things do ramp back up to normal, as Zach said, this is cyclical. So when things come back and you're going to be trying to hire up people, you're not going to be able to find them. But that is, I think, where, again, shameless plug, where companies like Silent Sector can assist, is that fundamentally we're more cost effective than, managing a whole team of cybersecurity professionals. But that's not necessarily what's best for your business. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, when the Bobs show up and say they're gonna, let go of your key developers and hire some interns and, farm some of it out to Singapore, that isn't the best plan for you from a cybersecurity perspective, especially if you're dealing with deep fakes in the US. Who knows what's overseas? So you got to be very trusting in your security. And the last thing you want to do in a challenging economy, although we're not officially in a recession, is give an excuse for someone to go somewhere else. If you get breached, if you have a problem, if you have downtime due to DDoS or whatever, people are just going to shop you somewhere else. So cybersecurity will actually making you more stable, secure, sound will make you money in the long run. Zach, you've talked about this. Was it cybersecurity risk to revenue or something like that?
Yeah, I think well, you're absolutely right. I mean, with when the Bobs come in and say, "What would you say you do here?" That's
I'm a
that's going to
people
drive people.
person.
I deal with the people. So, well, that's going to drive people away. And you're right. So, the risk to revenue methodology, absolutely. This is going to be a time. So, one, keep your people, right? That's kind of the bare minimum. If you have talented technical or security professionals, keep them. If you don't, hey, guess what? Might be a good time to get some, right? Because they're leaving these jobs that are saying, oh, you're pretty low on the totem pole and we don't really appreciate your skill set, right? I hate to say it, but that's how a lot of employers are treating their people. And they're leaving. So this might be a good opportunity for you to snatch up some great talent out there for your team. With that, if you are in an organization that does not have the capacity, capability, or you're cutting spending and you need outside help still, an organization, again, shameless plug, like ScienceSector comes in, and what we do is we work with organizations to really use cyber risk management as an asset to grow revenue, especially those B2B companies landing large enterprise contracts after the big fish. This is a time in the market that I've really been waiting for. I'm excited about because this is a time that's going to differentiate companies. This is going to separate the winners from the losers, right? The ones with the best services are going to succeed. The ones with a good reputation are going to succeed. The ones that have just been floating by because people have been throwing money at stuff as in the climbing economy, those are going to go by the wayside. And so it's an excellent time to be in business and make smart decisions. So I'd say, I'll echo that. Obviously, compliance, of course. I mean, it is compliance, and guess what? Nobody's going to say, "Oh, well, maybe you didn't make your revenue numbers last quarter, but so you don't have to worry about compliance this quarter." That doesn't
Yeah.
happen, unfortunately. It's just the nature of the beast, and those requirements are only getting more stringent. But the other side of the coin is, well, now you can start differentiating yourself from your competition, showing a higher level of service, a lower level of risk to your organizations that you're working with and your prospects, and they're going to be more likely to move forward with you. Likewise, as these large enterprises cut their budgets, a lot of times what they're doing makes more sense for those of you who run software as a service companies out there. You probably have a solution that saves them money, right? Over having a whole team of people do something. Maybe you've developed a product that solves that problem. Whatever the case is, well, this can be a good time to step in and use that to your advantage. So I'd say, with cyber risk management, know where your risks are, right? Keep your people, and then use that to your advantage as we move forward. But let's just get down into more. We're talking a bit strategic. Let's talk a little bit at a tactical level. If you have to cut budget within let's take a framework like any framework, NIST or CIS, and you look at the controls that are in those frameworks. Are there certain areas where you could say maybe we could postpone or we could delay for a quarter or two in these areas that are not compliance related or maybe not requiring a huge staff to run?
Centralized logging comes to mind for me, where you're doing log aggregation. Sometimes those projects can be very, very long and very complicated. And I think that's probably one of the places, because logging's occurring, right? It's not being centralized off host. So those are probably areas that could be pushed back and postponed for months, that won't really cost you a lot of proactive security, right? Proactive risk reduction. Logging's typically more reactive. You get a log event after something's occurred, so it's great for forensic investigations. But it's if you're looking at ways to keep the risk reduced, but also don't strain your budgets, and you're in the middle of maybe looking at those projects or forecasting for centralized logging to meet NIST or anything else, PCI. That's probably a place that I would recommend that you could push that off for a quarter pretty easily, and not not reduce the overall security posture of the organization.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point. So focus really more shift more from the proactive and reactive side, and maybe weight the proactive side much more heavily than the reactive.
I would
Well,
certainly, yeah.
well, and keep in mind, threat actors know you're cutting, right? So they're going to get more active, and they're going to be probing for it. So it's not to use scare tactics, but if you're going to pull back your defenses and consolidate and pull people off the line, for lack of a better word, they're going to find those holes. And so if you do something like, oh, we're not going to do scanning, or we're going to skip the pen test this year, or we're going to do that, that's all going to that's all going to create risk. We're not going to apply these patches. We're not going to do this. You have to keep your hygiene going. Um, and if I had to say, where to cut, I'd say cut your HR department. So, and
There you go.
outsource it to someplace else. um, you know, and
HR, legal, yeah,
yeah, I mean that can all be
accounting.
outsourced.
Well,
Um,
middle management's also coming to mind too, right?
yeah, exactly. How many supervisors do you need? I mean, do you really need 8 different bosses to tell you about the TPS reports? Um, you know,
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to fill out those TPS reports before you leave for the long weekend this weekend.
yeah, I'm gonna need you
Well,
to. Did you get that memo? Let me get you another copy of the memo.
so
Yeah,
you make
so
a good point, Mike. I think to use an analogy, wolves are going to look for the weak part of the pack, right?
yeah,
And that's how they're going to attack. They're going to isolate the elderly, game and they're or the young game, and they're gonna go after that, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. And so, to I guess to tie onto what Mike's saying, if you're looking for places to cut, make sure you're looking, internal organizationally that aren't a direct support to the risk reduction of your organization, right? So, like Mike said, you can't, all of these frameworks are I don't want to call them perpetual motion machines, but they essentially are. They're forever machines. Once you start doing SOC 2 or PCI or NIST or HIPAA assessments and internal audit, those things don't stop. You have to measure yourself continuously year after year. And then you're doing readiness assessments during that year to get ready for the next one. And so those are places that for that compliance hygiene and that cybersecurity hygiene, you can't really ignore those things because they will cost you in the end. So, I'd look at other inner departments that may, they facilitate a need for the business, of course, right? But are they stopping the wolves from taking out your crop? I mean, that's really the answer that you need to come to, right? What's what's playing a major role in the reduction of a risk for my company and what's not? And I think
yeah.
that's a better way to look at cutting costs for cybersecurity, especially if you're getting asked by investors to make the numbers meet better.
And then for you engineers out there, I actually have 2 points here. Companies will cut the top salaries as well as junior employees. So there may be actually a talent pool out there because the top salaries sometimes go and they're like, oh, these guys are higher priced. We can fold this down to the lower price guys. So you're going to have that gap in there that's going to create weakness as well in companies. So you need to be cognizant that you can't cut all your senior people. Senior people, you're going to go find a job somewhere else without a problem anyway. But um, so that's something to be keeping an eye on for the talent pool. For those of you that are in that engineer position that are out there and they're concerned about your jobs, some advice from someone who survived the downturn of the .com and the 2008: stay an engineer. Don't go into management. Stay an
Yeah.
engineer. Keep your skills strong and frosty, and just keep working on that because you always need the guys to dig the ditches and to do this, and to do the proactive cybersecurity. You don't always need management. I can't tell you how many friends of mine um, that went into in the early .com era went into the directors positions and managers positions and all that kind of stuff. And as soon as that .com bubble burst, they were unemployed. They're working at Burger King. Do you want fries with that? That whole 9 yards. I stayed employed. I bounced from contract to contract to contract. Actually increased my income because my technical skills were solid. Wasn't looking for, management or titles, but, stayed strong on those things. And that's how you survive something like this. So if the downturn goes hard, I'm not saying that we're going to head for that. I think we're a long way from there. That I'm not trying to forecast doom and gloom. I'm just giving some advice of that's how you stay relevant.
Yeah, stay technical. No, I think
Yeah.
that's really sound advice, Mike, and I'll echo that. If you're an engineer out there, make sure you stay technical. Even you got to think if you're getting a $20,000 pay raise to go into management, that really doesn't amount after taxes to that much money, more money a
Right.
month.
Right.
Not for the risk that you take to your future and to the current job market. Engineers again are always going to have work, and if you're thinking about going to cybersecurity, or you're even part of an IT engineering team that's been coined cybersecurity, right, because they can't afford to hire cybersecurity, so they're dual hatting your IT engineers as cybersecurity engineers as well. That's great, because like I said, there are almost 800,000 available jobs in the United States for cybersecurity professionals. I want to say it's something like 25 to 30 to 1 right now, jobs per one qualified individual.
Yeah.
So, if a company doesn't see, if your company in this time and they're trying to make numbers meet, right? I don't want to call it neo-capitalism, but if they're looking at the numbers and they're not caring about their people, then hold your head high and you'll have no problem going to find another job someplace else. And then
Yeah.
what'll happen is Mike and I can tell you they'll let you go, and then they'll beg you to come back in 3 months, and just you'll already have a happy life by then, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. Thanks for the
So
memories.
stay technical and stay classy.
Yeah.
That's a good tip. Now, the other, if I were to pull out my crystal ball here and look, a couple months down the road, if companies are laying off people, cutting budgets for cyber and for risk management in general, the attackers are, like you guys said, are going to be taking advantage of that, full advantage of that. In which case, it's going to hurt those companies more when they get breached, and many of them will go out of business. I mean, that's just the reality of the beast, depending on what goes on with it, the economy and all that stuff, right? So so business leaders are forced to make this decision because right now they're considering this kind of state of financial risk, right? If we didn't meet our sales numbers, if our customers are slashing their budgets, what do we do? So I would just urge people to remember that the cost of a breach is exponentially more than the cost of proactive cybersecurity. So when you're factoring that in, think about your financial risk, not only in terms of revenue generation from your current client base or prospects or people in the pipeline, but also the what if this highly likely attack occurs, right? And because we're seeing it all over. I mean, it's happening all the time, and unfortunately, it's causing a lot of harm to companies as more and more organizations are breached, are ransoms are demanded, or wires are sent out that aren't recovered. Whatever the case may be, that's going to leave a smaller pool, of course, for attackers to go after, therefore more heavily concentrated on certain types of organizations, and therefore putting more effort into attacking those organizations. So it'll be interesting to see. That's doom and gloom. I don't think it's really going to go to that level. But if it were, I always think of primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency plans. Right? What's our PACE plan? What do we do? How do we account for these what ifs? And that's just something that goes through my head from a business leader's perspective. How do we think about financial risk as a whole, and how do we factor in cybersecurity to that? I think it's an important thing to think about. I don't have all the answers for you, but something to reflect on. To say
Yeah, and share with us in the comments, if there's ideas or thoughts that you have based on the topic today. But to kind of circle back about the proactive things, continual patching and scanning has to be done. If you're reducing software development, or you're reducing IT engineers, you got to think that your business runs on these technologies that are out on the public facing internet. And if you don't have developers to do software checks for updates that are getting put in, if you're reducing those teams, that means you're reducing the quality assurance that's occurring before changes happen. And if you're
Right.
reducing the quality assurance before changes happen, and you're pushing changes that haven't been thoroughly vetted, you're gonna accidentally put something in place that's going to be a straw hat. and it's going to cost the business. So while those people, again, sometimes big investors, they don't care. They want to see the dollar amounts. They don't understand that they have more to risk when they reduce team members. But those proactive activities that are occurring, the continual patching, the continual vulnerability scanning, software development lifecycle, initiatives that are looking at quality assurance of the code before it goes into production. Those are necessary processes that actually in real world time reduce your risk, right? By having that extra set of eyes looking at the code just in case somebody made a mistake. If it gets pushed to production, I guarantee you someone's going to find it. And you can listen to the news every week with this podcast and the exploits that we give, and it doesn't even touch the number of items that are coming out on the worldwide web of things, of companies getting hit and software getting plugged, simply because of mistakes that humans are making. And the other mistake that you'll make is reducing your manpower force and thinking that you're going to still have the same results with security posture. It's unfortunately not true.
And don't go to WordPress to save money on your website either.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I've got a WordPress plugin that'll replace you. You know what I mean? Like, it'll get hacked, but it'll replace you.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, we don't have all the answers for everybody, but hopefully this helped people understand really where the necessities are and what to focus on, at least on a high level, as well as at a little bit at a tactical level, where you can focus your time and efforts, kind of what's truly important. And I think the reality is it varies for every company out there. So we can't possibly tell you specifically what's right for you unless, you reach out and we have that discussion. But for every organization will be a little bit different. But we hope this helped you at least start to think about these things and plan for contingencies, plan for if revenue numbers aren't met, if budgets are slashed, what do we do? What's important? Where do we focus? So hope you enjoyed this episode. Mike, Lauro, do you have any final words of wisdom before we jump off here?
Cut your HR department.
Tell us how you really feel, Mike.
Cut your HR department. Leave your engineers in place. They're the ones that are keeping your business afloat.
Well, there's a lot of things that you can outsource before you cut your internal IT resources, and no one's going to care about your internal IT security more than your internal IT people. You care more about your stuff than other people do, regardless of what they may tell you. So,
right.
And keep those people in house and keep them happy, and invest in them during this time because they'll feel valuable and trusted and empowered, as opposed to cutting things. If you want to get rid of the snacks in the break room, everybody's got to understand that, right? We can all afford our own snacks, but
just raise the prices to the soda machine. Make it $5 for a soda instead of 50 cents or whatever. But
maybe you only have the margarita machine on Thursdays and Fridays instead of 5 days a week. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and check out your executives aren't making like ridiculous travel, ridiculous travel expenses. Living these crazy lives, right? Flying back and forth on the company plane, things like that. But you can outsource your HR and accounting and all kinds of legal and everything else. But yeah, don't get rid of your engineers that are actually helping keeping everything together. That'd be the worst mistake.
They're going to be the hardest to replace. It's going to be tough. But the other thing too is there are a lot of companies that are just doing awesome, and there are a lot of companies that are really going to do great, regardless of turbulent times or whatever's in front of us. I mean, nobody can really forecast the future, but I'd say use this to your advantage. Get out there, land enterprise contracts, find out where they're cutting costs and where your tool or product can help, and step in and make it happen. Reach out if you need anything. And thank you for listening to the CyberRants podcast. Comment, let us know what you want to hear about, what topics are of interest, and please rate and share the podcast so we can get the word out to more people. Our mission is really to help companies all over the nation, all over the world, really, better secure their organizations, better protect their employees, their customers, their stakeholders, everything. We need to do that. We are in a big fight against cybercrime here. So thanks for being part of that and helping out. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Pick up your copy of the CyberRants book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the CyberRants podcast.